Well, hello and welcome to the Entrepreneur's Edge. Hanging out here with Eric Whitmoyer, founder and CEO of My Biz Coaches. And if you're new to the channel or maybe you haven't checked out our videos, these are all related to articles that Eric writes every single week about small business and entrepreneurship. So we encourage you to scan the QR code, sign up for that newsletter, make sure you get the awesome tips and advice from Eric, who is just an amazing business coach. And like I said, the founder and CEO of My Biz Coaches, which is a team of coaches that specializes in helping small business owners just like you. Today, we're going to be talking about time management, and we're going to be running through a couple of key points with you here today, really just kind of an overview of some important concepts relating to time management, specifically for entrepreneurs. And if this is something that you're interested in learning more about, Eric recently did a free 2-hour workshop webinar on these topics all around productivity and efficiency. So if you're interested in learning more after kind of the teaser, the appetizer you're going to get today, definitely scan that QR code or head over to mybizcoaches.co/time and check out the full 2-hour webinar there. And again, totally free. There's also some resources and some awesome discounts on some coaching programs through My Biz Coaches. So Eric, time management, something I know you excel at, and you and I have been talking about for years, and a bit of a passion of yours, which is awesome. And I know you've got some great insights on this. And so I think to kind of kick things off, let's talk about the time crunch that entrepreneurs often experience, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so let me put something to bed first. I don't know about an expert on time management. If I'm an expert on time management, it's only because I spend so much time getting better at managing my time.
Yeah, there you go. Fair. I'll give you that. Yeah.
Yeah. In the webinar we did today, it was one of the things I mentioned is that it is something that I recognize was something I need to improve on when I was younger. I spent a ton of time putting time and energy into developing the skills that would make me better at it. And then it became, because of the career that I chose and the industry that I was in, it was something that was very prevalent, very in your face, that you need to be able to manage your time in the retail world, particularly commission sales, retail. And it was something I had to continue not only develop myself, but for my employees. So spend a ton of time on that, to your point. So, but anyway, yeah. So I think that I honestly believe, I heard Alex Ramosi do something similar, said something similar. It's like, the reason I'm good at this is because I spent a ton of time working on it, because it was a weakness of mine. It was something I needed to improve on. And so consequently, I think that's relevant here in my particular case. Yeah. But as we talk about time management for entrepreneurs, I think the challenge is, and I, since I started My Biz Coaches, when I first started the business, one of the things that I continue to uncover with every engagement with a client was the fact that we keep running into scenarios where the business owner is wearing all the hats, right? Yeah. You're doing everything. You're invoicing customers. You're pulling the orders. You're shipping the product. You're delivering the services. You're doing the books. You're managing the employees. You're doing the sales. You're doing the marketing. And with all of that, how do you get anything productive done? I mean, more specifically, how do you work more on the business rather than in the business? Yeah. And honestly, the only way that you do that is you make it one of your most important things you do, and you have to just literally carve out the time to do that. But as an entrepreneur, small business, I don't care how. I mean, until you get to a certain point where you can afford the resources to have a number of people working for you. And I'm not talking about 3 or 4, I'm talking about tens, maybe 20s, maybe hundreds, where you're big enough and you have the resources to kind of spread that out and delegate to other people. But even then, you constant pull on your time. So entrepreneurship in and of itself is a time suck, and you have to figure out how to really grab hold of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, Eric. I think a lot of times, right, it's that sink or swim component. And really, if you struggle with time management, especially as an entrepreneur, it's going to have an impact to your business and profitability. So I think couldn't be more necessary, and really one of those skills that you have to work to master, like you said. So as we look at kind of the list here, it feel like you prioritized the list and put prioritization toward the top. I'm sure that wasn't an accident. But tell me why you feel like that's such a critical component for entrepreneurs.
Well, and I think honestly, it's a carryover. It's an extension from the goal setting. The quite honestly, how you spend your time should be in direct accordance with what you are, what your goals are, what you're trying to accomplish. And so, whether these are personal goals to lose weight, or read more, or whatever it might be, or they're professional goals that you want to increase your sales or improve your business or whatever that might be, the reality is whatever those goals are then become what you focus your time and energy on. And the issue is that most people aren't clear enough on the goals to be able to extrapolate that and then plug that in and create a good time management structure around it. And consequently, then we get caught up in bad habits that suck the time away. We get caught up in things that aren't good returns on investment for our time. And we end up being in a situation where we're constantly frustrated. We don't make any movement or any progress on key performance goals or things that we're really passionate that we want to accomplish. And often it's because we did not do a good job of prioritizing. How important is this to you? If it's that important to you, then it should be one of the first things, if not the first thing you do every day. It should be something that you actually schedule into your calendar and make an appointment to yourself to work on particular pieces, tactics. They're going to move that forward every day. And then there's never a day that you don't go by and assess where you're at and your performance. When you're doing that, you're quickly identifying whether or not, one, you're making progress towards your goals, but more importantly, two, you can go back and look at it and say, well, I had 5 things I needed to do to move my goal forward today, and I only did one of them.
Yeah.
And I only did one because I let time get away from me. I let other things get in front of it. I did not prioritize these particular tasks as the most important things that I should do today, and consequently, they didn't get done, and I'm not moving my project forward. And that's where people really just have to own the fact that prioritization is the most important thing when it comes to time management. The quote is, it's not about time management isn't about getting everything done. It's about getting the most important things done and getting them first.
Totally. Love it. Well, let's say, okay, go through and you've got some great stuff in the webinar, kind of more details around prioritization, how to work through that list, which
Absolutely.
is great. But really, the next thing is time blocking. So, Eric, what the heck is time blocking? What are we talking about, and how does that relate to prioritization?
Yeah. So time blocking really comes down to the when you've determined what it is you want to do. You basically just need to block out. So I said, we use the rule of 5, right? And we have 5 tasks that we're going to do every day to move those particular goals forward. Once I've identified what my goal is, then I build into a strategy, then I back into some tactics, and then break it down into action steps. Those action steps then become my daily activities. That's what I calendar myself to do these things. That's the time blocking. I block out time to do that. So for instance, David, I know you've been working on writing a book. You've actually contributed some chapters and things like that to books. A perfect example would be, how did you get that done? Well, I carved out some time every day, or twice a week or once a week or whatever it was, that I allocated that time just for that project. I made an invite to myself in my calendar. I told everybody else I'm not available during these times, and this is what I'm doing during that period of time. That's time blocking in essence. And the reality is the only way you're going to move projects forward that are going to take you from where you are out of your comfort zone to something you haven't done before is you're going to have to allot that time, right? Because it's not going to happen by accident. You're not just going to miraculously find a few hours a day to be able to do something. You're going to have, and if it's important to you, then it makes sense, right? You would plug that into your calendar and say, okay, it's my anniversary. I'm going to have dinner with my wife. You would put that in your calendar and say, I'm not doing anything that day from 4 to 7 p.m. or whatever the case may be. It'd be the same thing with this particular goal or these tactics or whatever it is that's going to move your project forward. You allocate that time, you block it out. You don't let anything else impose on it, and you let everybody else know around you, which is another big piece about communication, about time management, is communication to people who would impact your time. Yeah. And say, look, I'm not available during these hours. That's another big piece that's really important. But at time blocking is just blocking that time out for those particular projects. So you allocate that time ahead of time and then get the work done.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. You talked about something in the webinar, which is time blocking only works if you respect the block, right? And as soon as you don't,
Yes.
and you don't
Yeah.
respect that time block, then it doesn't really work anymore. So I think, yeah, just a great practical note on that that I love. So I think just one other thing here that's top of mind, right, as we're talking about, especially here, 2024, new year, AI, all these crazy things happening, leveraging technology. So how do we do that, and how does that relate to time management?
Yeah. So ironically, this information gathered through hours and hours of blocking out time to read and educate myself on AI. So I'm finding people who are really good at what they do and relevant to AI and reading what the information is, and then doing my research on that to understand what are the software applications that are available for my clients that they can incorporate into their businesses. Right. So none of that would have happened if I had not allocated the time to do that research. But yeah, as it relates to technology, I mean, the first thing that I would tell anybody as it relates to time management specifically, pick a technology that works for you. Don't worry about the newest, latest, greatest technology. Pick something that works for you and stick with it. And if that technology is still a binder with where you handwrite in there all
Yeah,
your notes and ideas and stuff like that and make appointments to yourself, then so be it. But whatever it is, make sure that you use it and use it consistently.
yeah,
But to your point, with technology where it is today, you can digitize and automate so many things. I mean, it's I mentioned earlier today, that I traveled 18 years of my career, and during those years, all that travel, it's like when I got to a point where like I could make all my reservations digitally and then save all those documents that I would need on my phone, so that I would just walk up to the different places I needed to go and scan my barcode and walk in and do what I needed to do. I didn't have to worry about paper tickets. I didn't have to worry
yeah,
about all that stuff is digitized. And then when I'm traveling, what if I need something? Well, I don't need to have that physical item. I can actually just have a picture of it, a code of it, or barcode of it, or whatever it is, QR code. All of that stuff is readily available digitally. That is substantial time savings when you preemptively decide these are things or tools that I'm going to need. These are resources I'm going to need a quick access to. Let me put them somewhere. It's yeah. You and I've had many conversations about file management. That's another
yep,
big one, right? File management, having access to the cloud, right? So whether it's Google Docs or Dropbox or some resource like that, but important files that you will need while you're traveling, that you may need, right? Or if you're working on a particular project, you absolutely need. And the fact that you can't get to it because it's in your PC at the house, well, the technology is there not to have to be limited like that. And many people, it takes a little bit of extra time to set it up and put it in place. But once it's done and you get used to that and you get accustomed to that, you're like, I don't know how I ever lived without it.
yeah,
And that's true of just about any technology. When we first get into it, it's like, oh, it's such a pain to learn. But once we learn it, then it's like, oh, well, how did I get by without it? Right.
yeah,
But
right,
but that's I think that's a big piece about technologies. One is accepting the fact that yes, there's going to be a growing pain. I'm going to have to adapt, but there's so many different resources and tools. We talk extensively about appointment setting. It's all electronic, and I don't need somebody to engage in my calendar specifically. The system, my calendaring system can manage that all for me. And there's so many more resources beyond that we can get into as it relates to each business. But taking the time to understand the technology and doing the research is an important component of that, and dramatically helps in managing your time.
yeah, yeah, absolutely right. And yeah, automation alone, which you hinted at, I mean, that's the
Yes.
literal hours and hours of savings. So if you're not incorporating that in some way, that's a miss. So I love the call out there. Another way, get some time back, right? If you're not delegating to technology, delegating to people. So talk to us a little bit about the power of delegation.
Yeah. Well, empires have been formed on the power of delegation.
True.
Delegation may have been a little bit of a loose term, right? But the point is, you get a lot done through other people, and
Yeah,
in a team of one, you may often feel like you don't have the ability to delegate to other people. I know I referenced that on the call again today as well. But the reality is, you have access to it, especially today, again, with technology and more specifically with resources the way they are, the remote work strategies that are available. You can hire a VA relatively inexpensively. There's a lot of debate on whether or not U.S. based, not U.S. based. At the end of the day, it's somebody who can do the skills that you're not necessarily good at or don't like to do, and they're good at them. So delegate to those people, right? One of the most important things I say about delegation is know who you're delegating to and make sure it's the right person, and make sure that what you're delegating to them is within their wheelhouse, within their skill set. It's bad enough if you're doing it and it's not what you're good at. But if you're like a solopreneur and you're like, I really stuck at this, or this is hard for me to do, or I really don't like doing this, then you're just going to procrastinate. You're going to put it off. You're going to not do it well. And you're going to be frustrated because at the end of the day, you won't get the return for the investment of time. Yeah. And so, but by employing a virtual assistant, you can now delegate to them. But so that's an important part is one is recognizing it's available to you, that having a resource to be able to delegate to. In addition to that, then there's a process for delegation. And, one of the things that I remind my employees all the time, or I've always reminded my employees, is there's two reasons why people don't do it. The first one is because they fear that somebody else won't do it as well as them, or they won't do it well enough, or whatever. The other one is that they're going to dump on people.
Yeah.
They'll just, here, do this. And then that's a bad experience, both for the person who delegated it and the person who got delegated to, right?
Yeah.
Because the person who got delegated to didn't get the right coaching and the right insight on how to do what needed to be done. And so consequently, they're now in a position where they're likely going to do less than a desirable job. The person who delegated is going to be unhappy. The person who did the work is going to be unhappy because they're going to get bad feedback. And to make everything else worse, the next time that the person has a task that they want to delegate, they're going to be apprehensive to do it. Right. And so understanding there's a process to delegation, you need to make sure you follow the process. Again, you can go see the presentation. It's probably the best way to do, but it is it's a 5-step process, and it takes time, and you have to be willing to, Dave Ramsey's quote from the presentation is that you need to be willing to take short-term results that are not ideal so that you can have a long-term solution to basically hand that off to somebody else. Right? I'm paraphrasing, but that's the point of delegation is to take things off your plate. So as we refer to it, as you can work on more high value tactics or skills or things that you need to do. And so bring somebody in and make sure that you can into that fold. And it doesn't even have to be an employee. It could just be somebody that you partner with.
Yeah.
But understanding, there's ways to do that. And it's important for you to consider how you can do that so that you can make more progress.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well said. Well, we're coming down the home stretch here. 2 more points that we want to touch on. One is continuous learning. That one may seem a little out of place when it comes to time management. So help us kind of understand that one.
Yeah. And I think that I kind of alluded to it earlier, but the reality is at the end of the day is that you don't, as I said, this has been a process for me, and it's evolved over time. My skill set has gotten better about managing time. It's still not perfect. It never will be. Right. And the reality is that I use the concept of CANI, constant never-ending improvement, right? So I recognize there's no such thing as perfect, but I can continue to strive to try and be perfect with managing my time. Never will be, but I can strive for it, right? How can I get a little bit better? And through that is, it's a learning process. I tried this, it didn't work as well as I liked. What did I do wrong? How can I do it better? And delegation is a great example. As I'm pulling back from that previous point, first time you do it, you won't do it right. Next time you won't do it, you probably won't do it right. I'd say 3, 4, 5 times, but it'll get better each time. And so you're learning from that process. I think that when you factor in all the components of really go into time management, you think about the principles that we covered today, the Eisenhower principle, the Pomodoro technique, the Pareto principle, and all these different things that we use in time management that most people probably are familiar with, but the actual application and how it can be applied in different areas is so important that most people miss some of those pieces. And I think that that's important for them. And so constantly realizing that, like, okay, I did a time management class. I'm now a pro at time management, right? I've probably read at least a dozen books on time management, at least. And by the way, I've read all of them multiple times. In addition to that, I've created multiple programs about managing time, and it's evolved each time because I've got new learning, new insights, new understandings that I'm now applying. And as technology evolves, it'll continue to force me to learn and develop and improve on those skill sets. So you have to commit to being an ongoing, we call lifelong learner, so that you can keep incorporating new strategies, new concepts, and improve that process.
Yeah, I love that, right? Technology, right? There's new tactics, even neuroscience, right? All those things are constantly changing.
You get into neuroscience, you're a whole nother level, right? Yeah, exactly.
Love it. Yeah, so definitely fits in there. And let's bust a myth while we're wrapping up here, which is the myth of multitasking. So why is it a myth?
Okay. First of all, I can't touch this topic unless you guarantee my wife doesn't see it.
I won't send it to her. How about that? I can guarantee that part.
Thanks, David. I appreciate that. My wife, who believes she's the best multitasker in the world, I've explained to her on many occasions, but she's a little apprehensive to appreciate what I try to say. But yeah, there's no such thing as multitasking. I mean, and this, you can, Andrew Huberman, you can get into the neuroscience of multitasking. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing. You cannot do it. If you do, you can be doing 2 or even 3 tasks at the same time, but you're doing it all half rear-endedly.
Right. Yes.
You're not getting the full result. So as long as it's a mindless task that doesn't require anything significant from you, you could probably get it with a few physical tasks and 1 mental task. But at the end of the day, the reality is none of them are getting done at a level they could be getting done at. So you're not being proficient. You're not being efficient with your time. And so at the end of the day, multitasking is just a complete waste of time. If again, like the reality is as you dig into a tactic where you think you were like, oh, well, I'm multitasking. I'm doing this while I'm doing this. But you're not really paying attention to what you're doing, which means whatever you're doing, you're denigrating it by 20, 30, 40%, depending on how much mind space you need to use to get the task done. Like I said, you could be thinking about something else while you're tactically doing something. But that's even then your how quickly you're doing the physical task is slower because your mind's not focused on it. So there's just no way to do that. And it's hard to get people who have heard this concept of I'm a multitasker, I can multitask. And like there's multitasking, and then I can't remember the term that somebody used, but it's a good concept in the sense that
unitasker.
Unitask. There you go. But the idea that you can do other things, you just can't do them concurrently at the exact same time. And I'll even openly admit, I acknowledge that I had a successful career in the wireless industry. At the same time, I owned some businesses, right, that I had invested in. Most of them were done in where other people were responsible for the day-to-day activities, and had that with that. That was probably a better use of my time, but not the best use of my time, because quite honestly, at the end of the day, I could only give that business so much time and attention.
Yeah.
Right. So there has to be an off ramp, right, where it's at some point I transition from this to that, because I can only give so much for so long. And actually, I had somebody ask me about that. I say, well, you had a lot of short-term businesses. I'm like, well, none of them could really be, unless they were going to be full replacements of my full-time gig. I'd literally have to continue to give more and more time away from the job into the project, the business, whatever, to be able to build it up, or literally have built it from day one in the sense that it was an investment. But then I'm not building it. I bought it like that. I would have to have bought something that was already in place and then strategically make it to be a standalone project.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love it. Yeah, well said. And I'd say myth busted. So awesome. Well, some great key points, Eric. Thanks for walking us through it. Really starting by recognizing entrepreneurs have a unique time crunch placed upon them. Talked about prioritization, time blocking, leveraging tech, delegation, continuous learning, and being a unitasker, right? Super important. So good stuff. If you're interested in learning more, as we've talked about, Eric's got a free 2-hour webinar replay on productivity and efficiency. Just head over to mybizcoaches.co/time or scan the QR code. And of course, make sure you subscribe to the Entrepreneur's Edge, where you can get Eric's articles and, subscribe here as well so that you can get the video content that goes along with them. So Eric, always a pleasure, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, David.